this is, if you remember, those of us who watched the film last night, you know, there are a couple of scenes in the film, like suddenly there are these enigmatic greenish things. And so this is, I think, Ruiz's visualization of Sigismundo's mental disorientation. Is this dream or reality? It's basically like what you're saying earlier in your talk, you know, how the Baroque is about ontological insecurity. Is it dream? Is it illusion? And so how do you represent that in cinema? And so he came up with this, you know, and this is actually moving. I mean, I don't have a clip of this, unfortunately. I should have had a clip. It's more fun because then you see other, this is just, it's artificial green color. And so the figures in there, they just go like, they pull these cobwebs. You know, there's the room filled with cobwebs and they're just pulling these cobwebs off around. The garishly artificial green in these shots is one instance of Ruiz's cinematic strategy of artificialization or derealization. It's anti-realism. As Adrian Martin observes, he's a critic of Ruiz's, Ruiz's films from the 1980s use bargain basement special effects from cinema's earliest days. Okay, mirrors, split screens, optical toys, smoke, shadow, garishly colored filters. There you see, there's more. He's got lots of really silly toys and miniatures. I mean, in the movie, I mean, you watch the film and think, who is he kidding? You know, trying to kid, like especially the Tower of Prison. There's like it's like a toy shop. I'm sorry.
It's the Tower of Babel, right?
Yeah, Tower. Yeah, I mean, the tower. You know, it's sort of kind of really artificial. I mean, obviously artificial. So but he likes that. He doesn't want he wants to break the illusion. So. Early modern scholars such as Marabal and Anthony Cascardi have outlined the emergence of the modern subject as the subject of control in the 17th century. They show how the modern and newly mobile subjectivity of self-regulation and self-mastery emerges from a new habitus produced by the internalization of the discipline of the rising absolutist state. As Cascardi points out, Calderon's protagonist, Sigismundo, exemplifies this process by which modern subjectivity arises from an interior subjection to an external system of higher authority, such as absolutism, the absolutist state. The new Sigismundo, who agrees to discipline his passions during his process of education, in which he comes to embrace the character of the virtuous prince, embodies this modern subject of control who has incorporated the discipline of the absolutist state. Indeed, Sigismundo's first act as the new king is to imprison the rebel soldier to whom he owes his liberty and justice, the righting of his father's wrong, which in turn he forgives. He forgives his father who was a tyrant, and he punishes the rebel soldier who saves his life and gives him freedom. Why does he do that? Calderon's play concludes with the restoration of the established order, absolutist monarchy. At the same time, Sigismundo's dungeon tower receives its second political prisoner, thus exposing the inability of absolute power to conceal its violent origins. It's very, I mean, Calderon is an apologist for absolutism, and it's making it very clear by the way that discipline and punishment operates at the end of the play. In its justification of political prisons, Calderon's play La Vida es Sueño exposes its uncritical support of authoritarianism. Calderon's play is an apology for the dictatorial state, and the echoes with 20th century dictatorships are very loud. The question is, how does Ruiz respond to them? First, Ruiz highlights the Calderonian image of a mountaintop tower prison throughout the film. The mise-en-scène of one of the B movies, a thriller Vega watches at the beginning, is a tower on a craggy mountaintop. Okay? The dungeon tower also becomes a nomadic image floating through Ruiz's film. And the Ruiz's film, you know, those of you saw it, and it really has like nomadic images. You know, the visuals that you see, they send you on detours. You don't know where it's leading to. But one of those nomadic images is this. This is the mountain tower. You know, one of the images they have. This is a silly little miniature. You know, it's an artifice. It's artificial. Yeah. And constructed from a miniature model, one of Ruiz's obviously artificial bargain basement special effects, the mountaintop tower prison is one of the digressive marginalia that seem to detour the main line of the narrative. From this present angle, however, it becomes a key emblem that allegorizes the repressive ideological core of Calderon's play. And so here's Ruiz's critique of Calderon. He's saying Calderon supports that. That's, you know, political prisons. As well as Ruiz's, so this is an emblem of his critique of Calderon, and it's also an emblem of Ruiz's critical revision of Calderon. An image that tells the story that it encapsulates, that is the mountain tower, tells the story of unjustified imprisonment. state terror, basically. It represents an instance of the cinematic allegorical image in Ruiz's work. As Ruizs explains, I have aimed above all to play with the idea of restoring to the image its natural ability to engender stories. And that's part of Ruiz's cinematic poetics, believes that cinema doesn't work mainly through narrative, it's really the mainly image that tells the story. It's image-based, it's very much visual-based. Okay, now I'll talk more about that. But now I want to say a few more words about Bembergs. If Ruiz's film offers Calderón's Baroque play as an allegory of Chile's tribulations under Pinochet, Bembergs similarly adapts her cinematic biography of Sor Juana to the contemporary post-dictatorship Argentine condition. Released 7 years after the end of military rule in Argentina, Bembergs' film too constructs explicit analogies between the colonial state Baroque and 20th century fascism. In an interview, Bembergs reveals that she crafted the film's mise en scène and cinematography to emphasize authoritarianism. Here's a quote from Bembergs: high angles and grand traveling shots of columns, cupolas, and a huge heart, and this huge heart imposing proto-fascist Baroque architecture whose bad taste only emphasizes the power to which it testifies. I needed to emphasize power, opulence, force. That's why I thought of the association with fascism. So for Bembergs, the fascist analogies are really in the mise en scène. It's in the architecture of the set, but it's also cinematography, the high angles. I'll give you a clip in a second. Trans-historical analogies to the contemporary Latin American dictatorships are suggested through allegorical mise en scène and cinematography. As Bembergs explains, I needed to create in the viewer the sensation that we are 300 years removed in time, but that we could also be here today. It's very much trans-historical. It's like the early modern, but it's also today in the 20th century, 21st century. Furthermore, Bembergs employs cinematic tableau style, a technique from early film in which each scene is staged like a stage-like tableau, a space resembling the theater stage, which camera movement delineates. And you'll see an example of that in the clip that I'll show. Either Worst of All takes its title from several renunciations Sor Juana signed in 1694 with her own blood, in which she condemned her previous life and secular works and pledged herself to withdrawing into complete silence and seclusion, dedicated to the religious life appropriate to her vows. Born an illegitimate child, Sor Juana had enjoyed a stellar career as a prolific writer and intellectual, which began at the court of the Viceroy of New Spain in Mexico City and continued after she joined the convent of San Jerónimo. A rare woman letrado, she was a celebrated member of the tiny colonial elite that Angel Lama calls the lettered city, acquiring an international reputation and corresponding with intellectuals in the Americas and in Europe. Around 1690, Sor Juana came under increasing pressure from the church, which she resisted defiantly at first, penning the Respuesta a Sor Filotea in 1691, a famous autobiographical and feminist self-defense unique for her times, which affirms women's right to use their minds just like men. Bembergs' film narrates the last 15 years of Sor Juana's life, the period between 1680 and Sor Juana's renunciation of literature in 1694, a year before her death. This includes the richest and most productive period in Sor Juana's life during the years 1680 to 1688, that the Marquis and Marquise de la Laguna, great personal friends of Sor Juana and supporters of her work, lived in Mexico City as the rulers of New Spain. Bembergs traces Sor Juana's trajectory from literary triumph and public acclaim to her silencing and formal self-denunciation before a private church tribunal. Bembergs' cinematic reinvention of Sor Juana portrays the Mexican Baroque poet as the archetypal victim of state terror. In one scene toward the end, Sor Juana is shown in long visual still, standing motionless behind the grill of a locutory and grabbing the bars above her head with both